Most people suck at losing weight. At this point in time, 75+% of Americans are overweight or obese. And it is absolutely no surprise because most people have no idea how to eat, how to train. And worst of all, studies show that 90+% of people who lose a significant amount of weight trying one of the popular fad diets like keto, paleo, or intermittent fasting end up gaining the weight back and then some. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 3-step fat loss framework that I used to lose 23 pounds in 84 days. And this was while continuing to go on dates with my girlfriend and eat out and while building my business. So if you don't know who I am, why you should listen to me, my name is Gabe Pluguez. I am the founder of DefaultKings.com. We are a Christian men's fitness coaching company. We've helped over 502 men lose fat up to this point. And what we do is teach the biblical process of actually changing your default actions so that you can lose the fat and keep it off. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. So fat loss is unsustainable when you forget the 3 fat loss force multipliers. Number 1, calories and protein. Number 2, resistance training. And number 3, your default actions. Let's break down number 1, calories and protein. Calories determine how much weight you lose, and protein keeps you full and supports muscle growth in the process. You absolutely need to be tracking your calories and protein every single day. And if you are thinking right now as you're watching this video, Gabe, I don't want to track, that's too hard, that's too tedious, then I'm sorry, but not tracking or tracking inconsistently up to this point has gotten you where you are, which is 40+ pounds overweight most likely. And so you quite literally have to track your calories because your intuition has led you astray in the past. The 4th book of the Bible is called Numbers for a reason. Right? God ordains that we take account of what we have, of what we're dealing with. I'm not saying it's absolutely impossible for you to lose weight without tracking your calories and protein, but what I am saying is that you are foregoing one of the patterns of biblical success when you don't know how many calories you're taking in or how much protein you're taking in day to day. The cool thing too about tracking your calories is it means you don't have to do any of the crazy restrictive fads like keto or intermittent fasting. You can eat technically whatever you want as long as you're not surpassing your calorie ceiling and as long as you're hitting your protein goal. And you might be thinking like, Gabe, does that mean that you can literally eat anything as long as you hit your calories and protein? And the answer is literally, if all you ate was Ben & Jerry's and protein shakes and you hit your calories and protein, you would lose the fat and build muscle. I know this because when I was 19 years old, I was already in love with fitness, but I was still in that college party phase. I lived in Florida. All my friends went to Florida State University. Football is religion at Florida State University. And so we would tailgate on the weekends. And like, for example, when they would have noon games, what I would do is I'd wake up at like 5 a.m. to go work out for 2 hours. And then because we had to start drinking by 9 a.m. so that we were drunk before the game at noon, after my workout, I would pound like 4 protein shakes, hit my protein goal, and then I would plug into my Fitness Pal like 13 White Claws or something like that. And I would literally drink just protein powder and alcohol all these days. I was right now. I do not recommend that for health advice because alcohol has so many other issues that just ruin your life. It's a net negative, but I did stay lean. What I am saying is that you technically could eat whatever you wanted and lose weight as long as it fits your calories and protein. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should. I will tell us that just because we can doesn't mean you should. And so it's good to have that freedom for things that aren't actually as harmful as, 13 White Claws in a day like 19-year-old Gabe, because that freedom allows you to go on date nights with your wife and, have the pizza. That freedom allows you to enjoy ice cream night with the kids. One of the most common questions I get with this is, Gabe, like, what do I set my calories at and what do I set my protein at? Your calorie ceiling should be 250 to 700 calories below what's called your caloric maintenance. Your caloric maintenance is essentially your metabolism, and your metabolism is composed of your BMR, which is just like your mere existence calories, how many calories your body just burns by existing in sleep. It's also composed of your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is the amount of calories that you burn when you're doing activity that's not specifically working out. So like me moving my hands here, I'm burning calories. That is NEAT. You then also have your EAT, your EAT, your exercise activity thermogenesis, which is how many calories are actually burning in the workout. And then you have your TEF, which is the thermic effect of food. That's how many calories you actually burn just by digesting food. You can try to figure that out all on your own, but honestly, what I recommend is just going to caloriecalculator.net, plug in your information and make sure you're honest about it, because most people will generally overestimate how active they are. Use that number that it gives you as your estimated caloric maintenance. Now, it's not going to be exactly perfect straight to the T. It's more than good enough to start with. And then what you'll set as your calorie goal is either 250 on the very conservative end down to 700 below that daily. So if it says your maintenance calories is 2,200 calories a day, then you could set your calorie intake for as high as 2,000 calories a day, or, as low as like 1,650 calories a day. Obviously, the more you cut, the more aggressive that's going to be. And so keep that in mind from hunger perspective and what you can actually sustain. Now, what you're going to set as your protein goal is going to be between 0.7 to 1 grams of protein per pound of body weight. The reason there's that range is because there's never been a study that shows that more than 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is any more beneficial than just 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. But the real determinant of your protein goal should be your lean body mass, not necessarily your total body weight. So like, for example, the leaner you get, the more grams of protein per pound of body weight you need, because quite literally just more of your body weight is made of lean muscle mass. So like somebody like me who's under 15% body fat, I should be taking in 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Now, if you are a higher body fat percentage and more of your body weight is composed of body fat and relatively less lean muscle mass, then you can actually be lower on this scale, right? So like if you're 400 pounds and you're 5'10" and you've never worked out a day in your life, that doesn't mean taking 400 grams of protein. Okay, I probably have more muscle than you at 185 pounds. And so you don't need 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. You can go lower on that scale. So keep that in mind. What I would say is that if you're above 20% body fat, which is like getting into that obese category, you can be at 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight. As you work closer to like 15, you can bump that up to like 0.8-ish to 0.9 grams per pound of body weight. Once you get sub 15% body fat, where you're actually seeing abs, you can go to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Good rule of thumb there. Now, that is nutrition. Force multiplier number 2 is resistance training. I say resistance training specifically, not just working out, because there are a million different things you can do to work out. And my disclaimer here is doing anything is better than doing nothing. So, whether you do CrossFit or whether you run or whether all you do is stretch, like that's better than literally doing nothing. But resistance training specifically is the most efficient way to lose fat and the highest leverage way to keep that fat off long term. Because what resistance training actually does, apart from the muscle that it builds and how it makes you look better in t-shirts and how that makes you look better with your shirt off, is resistance training increases your metabolism. Because lean muscle mass, like the actual tissue, lean muscle tissue, the stuff that's built when you resistance train, that is the bodily tissue that is more metabolically active than any other tissue in the body. So the muscle, it burns more calories than your organs and burns more calories than your bones and burns more calories than your ligaments and your tendons than everything else. And so the more muscle you have, the more calories your body naturally burns 24/7, 365. What that means is, yes, you're going to burn calories while you do the workouts, like any other form of working out, but you increase your calorie burn over time passively. You can think of building lean muscle mass as the MRR of fitness. In a subscription-based business model, you sell the customer one time, and of course, as long as you maintain the satisfaction, they continue to pay you time and time and time and time again. It's recurring. It's the same thing with muscle mass. You burn the calories when you do the workout to build the muscle, and as long as you maintain that muscle by working out consistently, it continues to burn calories at an increased rate for the rest of your life, right? So specifically resistance training. Now, resistance training is primarily lifting weights. That can be done at a gym. That can be done at home with some sort of home gym, but it can also be done with a mixture of some sort of calisthenics. So like pull-ups definitely qualify as resistance training. Push-ups, as long as those are challenging enough for you, can definitely qualify as resistance training, right? You can do a resistance training session in a hotel room with, a heavy backpack and some resistance bands. And yes, there are nuances and practicalities when it comes to just using bands versus actually lifting weights in like a state-of-the-art gym, but all of it falls under the umbrella of resistance training. All of it will build muscle, especially if you're not doing anything consistently right now. And so you want to pick some form of resistance training and do that consistently. That will make you look like you actually work out, and it'll increase your metabolism. And that increased metabolism makes it easier to keep the fat off long term. You quite literally buy food freedom when you have more muscle. The food decisions that are tastier, higher calorie, are less consequential over time. My maintenance might be around 3,000 calories a day. If I burn 3,000 calories a day, I can have 1,800 calories of pizza at the end of the night. It's not that big of a deal. That's the freedom that having more muscle buys you. So it's really, really cool. Now, force multiplier number 3 is your default actions. And this is the most important one. Your default actions are the habits that you default to when you're tired, bored, stressed. Sometimes it's just mindlessly. Sometimes it's when circumstances are changing. Think about these things as the things you shouldn't be doing, but you do them anyway. All right. It's what Paul talks about in Romans 7:15-24, where he says, I do not understand what I do. For the good I wish to do, this I do not do. And the evil I wish not to do, this I do. Right. That probably sounds pretty familiar when you think about your health and fitness, where you're like, I know that it's the chips and the ice cream at 1 a.m. that's making me gain all this weight. And I want to stop, but I do it anyway. I can't stop myself. Right. You lose that mental battle when you have have your hand halfway down the bag of chips. Those are your default actions. And so most people will go on hyper restrictive style diets. They'll go cold turkey, they'll white knuckle it, they'll rely on willpower. Eventually they always end up throwing in the towel and gaining weight back. And it's not because they don't really know they're doing things that are hurting them. It's because they never changed their default actions. So at the end of the day, you need to change your default actions. That involves a spiritual and a psychological shift. That involves the mindset shift behind what it is you're doing to lose the weight and keep it off. So without making this an hour-long deep dive into how to change your default actions, I have other videos about stuff like that on my YouTube, and we teach that specifically inside defaultkings.com. 3 big things that you should focus on to change your default actions. Number 1, you need to adopt the identity of somebody who is healthy. Romans 6:6 says, "For we know that our old self was crucified with him so that the body ruled by sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin." So that reference point there of we should no longer be slaves to the gluttony and sloth, the default actions that got us up to this point. Also that portion of the verse there that says, if we hang our old selves up on the cross, if we crucify our old selves, then the body, the unhealthy, overweight body ruled by sin, might be done away with. And so that result of no longer being a slave to sin, changing your default actions, and having the body that's ruled by sin done away with, lose the fat, keep it off, points back to crucifying your old self, hanging that old self up on the cross, changing your identity, your old self, your perception of who you are, your belief about who you are. For example, a lot of guys who we work with, before they lose the weight, they'll have this identity of, I'm just a sweet tooth, or, I'm just a fat POS. Those accusations from the enemy that come specifically in the times where you're weak or where you fall. Like after a binge, or when you wake up and see yourself in the mirror and you see that gut spilling over your belt line and you're like, I'm a fat POS, right? That identity, that's an accusation from the enemy. And what happens is unknowingly men come into agreement with these things. The reason I say that is because what the Bible does tell us about who we are is that God created us in his image and likeness. And I'm a fat POS does not qualify under in God's image and likeness. And so you need to have that identity shift. You need to actually come into agreement and ask yourself, who does God say I am? God says I'm disciplined. God says I'm driven. God says that my body is a testimony for his message of grace. God says that I was bought with a price, therefore honor my body. And so we need to have that identity shift in our health and fitness if we wish to actually change our default actions. The second big thing we need to do is we need to get accountability from other men. Proverbs 27:17, it says, iron sharpens iron. That is very straightforward. Matthew 18:19 also says that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything, my Father in heaven will do it for you. So you need to find men who can come into agreement with who God says you are, about what God can do in this area of your life, in your health and fitness. If you can find men who agree that God will redeem your body, that God will redeem your health and fitness, that God can break the chains that have held you captive with these unhealthy default actions for the last, 2 decades. If you can find men who agree that that's possible, God will do it for you. And then the third thing that you need to do to change your default actions is you need to learn from somebody who has done it before. You need to have a council of many trusted advisors, because victory is won through a council of many trusted advisors. That is Proverbs 15:22. And so those are the 3 big force multipliers for you to not suck at losing weight and keeping it off. Most of the world does, so don't feel condemned if you find yourself in this cycle too. The Bible says that we are not to conform to the patterns of this world, but we are to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And if we're currently overweight or obese or unhealthy, we are objectively conformed to a pattern of the world. And yes, the excess body fat that you currently feel around your belt line is the physical debt for the spiritual sin of gluttony. But remember that when Jesus was hanging up on the cross and he took that last breath and he said, "It is finished," the translation of "it is finished" in the original language was quite literally paid in full. And so he has already created you to be the man who can get rid of the fat and keep it off long term. He has already placed the seed within you that is going to produce the tree of great health, of discipline, of a body that honors God. I hope that you found this video helpful. Check out one of these videos for more fat loss tips and more tips on how to honor the temple of God. Love y'all. See you on the next one.